What's up, happy fabricators? Welcome back to Fab Tool Friday, where I bring you a small segment on a tool that you've either seen on this channel or I found helpful in the fabrication industry. Let's get started. Okay, so the tool that made the cut for episode 5 of Fab Tool Friday is the silica strip disc. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you see that these show up frequently. It's because I use them frequently. What I love about these so much, and I actually only found them probably about 2 years ago, but I use them a lot now, is the fact that you can clean up surface rust, mill scale, stuff like that, and all it does is take the top layer off without gouging the material. I'm sure you've all taken a flap disc or a grinding disc and you're sitting there grinding that mill scale off, and what you'll find is you'll actually gouge that material off and leave little ditches per se, or low spots in that material. Whereas this disc right here will not do that. This thing will just take the mill scale off or just take that surface rust off and leave a good clean finish afterwards. Now, I've not tried all of these, but I've tried several different brands of them, and I've honestly found that some of the cheaper ones on Amazon work the best. I will leave links to those down in the description below, but they all work fairly well. Now, there's a couple things to consider if you are going to use a disc like this. Number one is the RPMs. If you have a grinder with higher RPMs, a lot of manufacturers recommend no more than 11,000 RPMs on these things, and you'll have to check. Each disc is different on what they call out, but some of these grinders are upwards of like 1,300 RPMs, and you could just have pieces fly off on you. Another thing to consider if you're using these things is if you want them to last longer, you want to avoid using them on sharp edges. So I like to try to just use them on flat spots. I'm not going to do it on my nicely coated table here, don't worry. But what I mean by that is, like, you don't want to be trying to soften the edge of a part with these things, because it's just going to dig in to the pores on this and rip it apart, and you will greatly shorten the lifespan of this thing. I gave some to a friend and they're like, these things are awful, they don't last very long, and I found out that they were trying to use it like a flapper disc and take the edge off of a piece of material. They're not meant for doing that. Use your flapper disc to knock down hard edges on the edge or corners of material. What this is meant for doing is conditioning the surface or stripping the surface of something. So if you save this for the flat spots and keep it flat, keep it away from hard edges, these things will actually last quite a while and you'll get a lot of life out of them. Another thing to consider is they do load up with greases and oils very quickly. So if you're trying to clean something up on a part that has grease or oil on it, I highly recommend trying to degrease it, flush that off before you start using this, because what'll end up happening is it'll load up with a grease or that oil, and then you'll end up just smearing and transferring that to somewhere else on your part. And we're going to make the assumption that you're cleaning it so that you can weld it or paint it, and both of those cases you don't want grease or oil transferred and smeared elsewhere. So take that into consideration. Sometimes what I'll do is I will just use a sacrificial one to go into the greasy, oily spots if I can't degrease it all the way, and then I will pull that one off and put a clean one on to do the remainder of the area, then degrease the area again, and then go back in and clean it. But once you've got grease or oil in these things, I just recommend tossing it out, because you're just going to cause yourself more havoc transferring that somewhere else onto your part. And take it from me, it's not worth it. The same thing goes with if you try to use a paint stripper before using this thing, don't do it, because that soft paint that has the stripper in it will do the same thing. It'll load up in it, and then you'll just be like smearing paint stripper all over the place. These things, you don't need any paint stripper. It will take it off by itself, and they work very well. I actually don't like paint stripper anymore after I've used these things, because your part stays dry. You don't have that gummy paint that you have to make sure you get off. And they're multi-purpose. They don't just work good on paint, they work good on surface rust. I've used these on powder coat also. It depends on the powder coat. Sometimes powder coat will load these up. It just depends on the powder coat. But sometimes, even though they're getting loaded up, it's still faster than a flapper disc removing it. And depending on what your time is worth to you, these things aren't that expensive. It might be worth it even if you don't get quite as much life out of it. These things actually work pretty good on aluminum too. It is a little more abrasive if you have clean aluminum. It might be too harsh for you, but if you've got dirty oxidized aluminum, these things work really good to clean it up. So I highly recommend getting some of these for your tool arsenal. I know I use them almost on the daily, and they have been a game changer in my fabrication. So I think that's going to wrap up episode 5 of Fab Tool Fridays. Thanks for watching. I would love to hear your comments on the applications that you've used these on, and if you haven't used them, let me know as well down in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, guys. If you want to see more fabrication content, click some of the links that are going to pop up here. If you want to be notified of upcoming videos, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. It's free to do so, and go build something. See you next Friday.